Imagine standing before the mirror at the end of the day. Strip away the clothes, scrub the grime off your face, and stare deep into the abyss of your own eyes. What do you see? Do not lie to me. I know exactly what you see. You see absolute terminal exhaustion, a hollow husk hemorrhaging energy. You are not drained because you work too hard or bear the weight of grand destinies. You are exhausted because for the past 24 hours, you have been desperately acting in a trashy theater production. Recall it, the spike of panic short-circuiting your brain when your boss frowned, the pathetic way you drafted and redrafted a message just to avoid offending someone you don't even respect, the forced smile contorting your facial muscles during a meaningless conversation. You quantify your self-worth through every nod, every like, every shallow adulation. You call it tact, high EQ, or knowing how to navigate life. Pathetic. Under my surgical scalpel, it is merely the festering symptom of a subpar, dwarfed mind. You don't know how to live. Your nervous system is being devoured by the validation parasite. Your neurological hardware was implanted with a primal coding error by society the moment you were born, a lethal dependency on external dopamine. This parasite resides in your prefrontal cortex. It demands to be fed daily. It gnaws at your natural self-esteem, carving it out into a gaping black hole. The more obediently you chisel yourself to fit the gaze of others, the more you fertilize this beast until it completely overwrites your original psychological DNA. The consequence? You exist in a state of perpetual fear. Fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, fear of being deemed an anomaly. In quantum mechanics and astrophysics, mass dictates gravity. The brutal reality is this: the crowd, comprising billions of frail egos, riddled with fears and prejudices, has amalgamated into a colossal mass of the herd. Its gravitational field is what crushes your chest every single day. When you care about what others think of you, you willingly step into their gravitational pull. You allow the photon particles of your own energy to be sucked into the event horizon of mediocrity. Your trajectory is warped, your developmental time is frozen, and ultimately you are crushed into the fine dust of assimilation. You become just another nameless brick in the invisible prison they have constructed. But let us coldly analyze this. Who exactly are these creatures you drain your life force to appease every night? They are nothing but chaotic molecular structures governed by the lowest biological impulses: envy, greed, prejudice, and herd panic. Their moralizing theories and judgmental sermons are merely a camouflage for their own paralyzing insecurities. Why then, in the name of supreme intellect, would you hand over the root access of your mind to such pathetic entities? Every time you fear public opinion, you are granting thousands of amateur hackers permission to overwrite your operating system with garbage code. The history of the dominators, the true phantoms pulling the strings of humanity, has never been written by those begging for consensus. Machiavelli did not teach princes how to be beloved by the flock. He taught them how to construct a ruthless architecture of power, impervious to the bleating of sheep. Do you wish to escape this suffocation? Do not seek healing through empty positive thinking platitudes. You must undergo a radical psychological excision. Reposition the gaze of the herd using the framework of quantum physics. Their judgments, criticisms, and praises are, in reality, merely the cosmic microwave background, the static, meaningless residual noise of long-dead explosions. It fills the space around you, but its actual kinetic force is zero. It cannot alter your atomic structure unless you voluntarily lower your own frequency to resonate with it. Stop hemorrhaging your energy. Sever the external dopamine supply lines. When you stop feeding the validation parasite, it will starve to death. And when it rots away, you will not feel happy immediately. What you will feel is a chilling, eerie stillness, the absolute void of a mind that is finally ready to become the tyrant of its own reality. Welcome to the clinical cold. Now that you have begun to starve the validation parasite, your mind is likely a chaotic mess of withdrawal symptoms. To stabilize the system, we must drastically lower the temperature. The herd fundamentally misunderstands the concept of not caring. The weak and the mediocre mistake it for apathy, using it as a pathetic excuse for their own laziness and inertia. They view letting go as giving up. But under my architecture, not caring is not a retreat. It is a highly calculated thermodynamic state. It is absolute zero, 273.15 degree. In physics, heat is merely the frantic, chaotic vibration of molecules. Anxiety, fear of judgment, and the desperate need for approval are the psychological equivalents of this thermal chaos. When you care too much, your mind is boiling, a high-entropy system wasting immense cognitive energy just to manage emotional friction. You are burning alive in the furnace of other people's expectations. The surgical excision of caring requires you to plunge your internal temperature to absolute zero. At this exact threshold, all subatomic panic halts. The frantic vibrations of self-doubt cease entirely. You do not withdraw from the world, instead you freeze the thermal noise of the world around you. When you achieve this state of supreme cold, a remarkable physical phenomenon occurs: power superconductivity. When certain materials reach absolute zero, electrical resistance vanishes completely. Energy flows infinitely without losing a single fraction of power to friction. When you surgically remove emotional resistance, when you genuinely stop caring about validation or failure, your mind achieves superconductivity. You execute decisions with lethal, frictionless precision. You glide through high-stakes environments completely unaffected by the erratic thermal noise of the masses. You become an unstoppable current of pure, calculated will. You are now a superconductor. But to wield this infinite current, you must learn to navigate the very variables you no longer seek to control. Even as your mind approaches the chilling threshold of superconductivity, your frail human instincts will beg for a lifeline. That lifeline is control. The mediocre mind is obsessed with micromanagement. You script your conversations, you overanalyze every fleeting facial expression, and you neurotically attempt to dictate how the world perceives you. You desperately believe that if you grip reality tightly enough, you will finally be safe. Let me shatter that pathetic illusion with the merciless logic of quantum mechanics. Recall Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You can never simultaneously know the exact position and the exact momentum of a quantum particle. The harder you force a measurement on its position, the more chaotic and unpredictable its momentum becomes. The exact same law dictates the architecture of power. When you frantically try to lock down the exact position of your reality, micromanaging people's opinions, suffocating relationships with your expectations, and forcing specific outcomes, you annihilate the momentum of your own potential. You kill the natural, dynamic evolution of opportunities. You reduce yourself to a frantic janitor of minor details, scrubbing the floors of a collapsing building while convincing yourself you are its architect. True dominators do not micromanage the subatomic particles of everyday existence. They understand that safety is a myth manufactured to keep the herd docile. Trying to control the unpredictable variables of life is a fool's errand that only drains your psychological reserves. To master the quantum mechanics of silence, you must release your suffocating grip. Let the variables blur, allow uncertainty to exist without reacting to it. By refusing to chase down every loose end, you conserve the infinite energy of your superconductive state. You stop being a victim of unpredictable circumstances and start becoming the massive silent gravity that those circumstances are forced to orbit. You have stopped trying to control the particles. Now prepare to weaponize your stillness. We must explore the terrifying power of simply watching the chaos unfold. The herd is utterly terrified of the void. Watch them squirm when a conversation falls silent. They instinctively scramble to fill the emptiness with frantic justifications, neurotic over-explanations, and desperate, fawning laughter. Every unprompted word they vomit is a low-frequency radiation, an SOS signal broadcasting their agonizing need to be understood and validated. This compulsion to over-communicate is the universal hallmark of prey. We will now weaponize their discomfort using the quantum phenomenon known as the wave function collapse. Before observation, a subatomic system exists in a blurry superposition of all possible states. It is only the act of observation that forces the variables to snap into a single, definitive outcome. When you frantically explain your actions or defend your ego, you are actively interfering with the system. You force a premature collapse of probabilities, invariably to your own strategic detriment. You must eradicate this reflex. You will evolve into the static observer. Construct an impenetrable architecture of silence. When you are confronted, provoked, or judged, do not offer them the oxygen of a reaction. Give them nothing but absolute freezing stillness. Let your gaze become a psychological black hole. By refusing to engage, you keep their reality suspended in a terrifying state of superposition. The mediocre human mind cannot process this ambiguity. It violently rejects the unknown. Under the crushing pressure of your silence, they will inevitably panic. They will rush to project their own deepest insecurities into the vacuum you have engineered. They will negotiate against themselves, reveal their hidden motives, and sabotage their own leverage just to elicit a flicker of validation from your stone-cold face. You do not need to draw a blade to conquer. You merely need to observe the chaos with the unblinking, calculating gravity of a dead star, waiting for them to collapse under their own weight. Consider the pathetic mating dance of the human herd. They dress their fragile egos in neon, projecting a desperate, blinding glare of availability and need. They exhaust their finite resources, chasing affection, networking for status, and pleading for loyalty. They operate under the delusion that by radiating more light, they become more attractive. This is a fundamental miscalculation of cosmic proportions. In the ruthless mechanics of the universe, true magnetic power does not belong to the stars that burn the brightest, it belongs to the entities that devour them. You must stop being a dying star and become a black hole. A black hole does not emit light. It is a region of space-time where gravity is so infinitely dense that nothing, not even radiation, can escape it. When you finally achieve total psychological detachment, when you genuinely do not care whether someone stays or leaves, loves you or despises you, you cease to broadcast the weak, repulsive frequency of need. Instead, you create an unyielding psychological vacuum. You establish an event horizon around your persona. The mediocre mind is entirely ill-equipped to handle this phenomenon. Human psychology is biologically wired to pursue what it cannot easily penetrate or conquer. By offering them zero external validation and demanding nothing in return, you aggressively bend their psychological space-time. They will find themselves inexplicably drawn to your cold, self-contained architecture. The less you try to pull them in, the more frantic they become to orbit your gravity. They will project profound mystery onto your silence and unshakable strength onto your apathy. They will willingly surrender their energy, their infatuation, and their loyalty simply to feel a fleeting connection to your impenetrable mass. You do not need to hunt for devotion. You merely need to become a singularity of absolute self-sufficiency, letting the weak exhaust their own fuel just to remain in your orbit. Now, to solidify this mass, we must demolish your pathetic desire to be flawless. Perfectionism is not a standard of excellence. It is a cowardly, neurotic, defensive mechanism. You obsessively polish your facade, desperately plastering over every microscopic crack, terrified that a single structural flaw will invite the herd's judgment. You build a pristine, perfectly symmetrical glass tower, deluding yourself into thinking it projects strength. In reality, you are merely broadcasting your profound fragility. A glass tower is rigid, brittle, and destined to shatter at the first seismic shock of unpredictability. Let us consult the blueprints of history's true dominators, the emperors, the tyrants, the apex predators of human civilization. Their psychological architectures were never flawlessly symmetrical. They were jagged, scarred, and brutally disproportionate. They did not cower behind the illusion of perfection. They constructed their empires on unyielding, load-bearing foundations of pure pragmatism. In materials science, the supreme resilience of forged steel does not come from a perfect atomic lattice. Its unbreakable strength is derived entirely from its dislocations, the structural defects and raw impurities deliberately hammered into its core. Flawlessness is brittle. Defect is indestructible. Stop bleeding your superconductive energy to maintain a sterile, harmless persona. Let the architecture decay where it must. Embrace the jagged asymmetry of your raw nature. When you completely obliterate the desire to be flawless, your unapologetic imperfections transform into a weaponized radiation. The herd, conditioned to expect the safe, polished symmetry of sheep, will be blinded by the sheer, unvarnished density of your presence. You stop apologizing for your design, and they will instinctively bow to its brutalist weight. You do not need to be perfect to conquer, you only need to be structurally invulnerable. Now that your pathetic glass tower is shattered, we shall forge a new method of control. We will explore how to manipulate the fabric of reality without moving a single muscle. The herd operates under the pathetic delusion that power requires kinetic exertion. They scream, they negotiate, and they deploy clumsy, desperate ultimatums. They exhaust their vocal cords and their sanity trying to force obedience, completely ignorant of the fact that visible effort is the ultimate proof of powerlessness. True dominators do not sweat. They operate on the terrifying principle of quantum entanglement. In quantum mechanics, when two particles become entangled, their states are permanently linked. Alter the spin of one particle, and the other instantly alters its state to match, regardless of the physical distance or barriers between them. There is no visible connection, no force applied, only instantaneous, inescapable synchronization. This is the highest tier of psychological warfare. You do not need to issue commands to subjugate your targets. You only need to abruptly alter your own internal state. When you surgically extract your desire for their compliance, you flip your psychological spin to a state of absolute freezing apathy. The moment you genuinely detach, when you stop calling, stop correcting, stop offering the emotional friction they secretly crave, the entanglement takes effect. The sudden deprivation of your predictable input creates an agonizing vacuum in their reality. Their nervous systems, previously anchored by your reactions, will spiral into chaos. Without you exerting a single ounce of kinetic force, they will frantically adjust their own behaviors to re-establish the equilibrium they lost. They will correct themselves, overcompensate, and ultimately submit, driven entirely by the phantom weight of your sudden withdrawal. You manipulate not by pushing, but by ceasing to exist in the spaces they expect you to occupy. Let them flail in the void. But to wield this invisible tether flawlessly, you must dissect your own biology. We must now amputate your capacity for fear. To master the invisible tethers of manipulation, you must first eliminate your own ultimate biological vulnerability, fear. The herd is enslaved by a primitive almond-shaped cluster of neurons buried deep within the temporal lobe, the amygdala. It hijacks their rational faculties with frantic fight-or-flight signals at the slightest hint of failure, rejection, or uncertainty. They sweat, they tremble, they hesitate. They are perpetually held hostage by ancient chemical reactions designed to evade prehistoric predators, rendering them utterly pathetic in the arena of modern psychological warfare. To paralyze this primitive reflex, you must recalibrate your perception of time using absolute astronomical brutality. Understand this inescapable truth: the past is a dead star. Its light may still plague your vision, but the celestial body itself has already collapsed into cosmic dust. Agonizing over previous mistakes is as clinically delusional as trying to warm your hands by the residual glow of a supernova that died a billion years ago. Conversely, the future is an unformed nebula, a chaotic, hypothetical cloud of gas that does not yet exist. Fearing it is a self-induced hallucination. Only the absolute present possesses tangible, measurable mass. You must perform a cognitive vivisection on yourself, surgically severing the neural pathways that connect your amygdala to these pathetic illusions of time. When you face an impending risk or a potentially catastrophic failure, do not allow an emotional adrenaline spike to flood your system. Instead, process the threatening variables with the freezing mechanical precision of a descending guillotine. By intentionally overriding your amygdala, you achieve weaponized apathy. Failure is no longer a source of paralyzing terror. It becomes merely another raw data point seamlessly fed into your algorithm of dominance. You will march into the crucible of chaos without a single spike in your pulse. Now, with fear completely eradicated, we must architect how you move through a world of frantic emotional friction without absorbing a single spark. The herd exists in a state of constant agonizing collision. They are like billiard balls on a crowded table, smashing into one another, losing their kinetic energy to the heat of friction, their pathetic dramas, their sticky attachments, their desperate needs. They call this human connection. I call it a high-entropy waste of life force. Every time they bond, they are merely forming covalent traps, sharing their pathetic vulnerabilities like decaying isotopes trying to stabilize their own inherent rot. To master the quantum mechanics of silence, you must adopt the physics of the neutrino. A neutrino is a phantom particle. It possesses almost no mass and moves at near light speeds. It can pass through light years of solid lead or the densest social chaos without ever striking a single nucleus. It exists in the world, it moves through the world, but it is not of the world. It is the ultimate architect of frictionless existence. You must interact with the masses, but you must refuse to form chemical bonds. Most human intimacy is a suicide pact of mutual dependency. They want to anchor you with their expectations so they can feel less adrift. They want to transfer their thermal noise into you to cool their own burning anxieties. Do not allow it. Be present, be visible, yet remain chemically inert, the noble gas of the social hierarchy. You engage with their systems only to harvest the resources necessary for your own expansion. You observe their emotional outbursts with the detached curiosity of a scientist watching a chemical reaction in a sealed chamber. No matter how violent their heat, it does not transfer to your superconductive core. By eliminating emotional friction, you conserve 100% of your cognitive power. You glide through high-stakes negotiations, betrayals, and crises as a ghost in the machine. You are unentangleable. Now, with your movement perfected, it is time to reach the final threshold. We ascend to the singularity. You have arrived at the terminal threshold of your reconfiguration. This is the singularity. the point where your internal psychological density becomes so infinite that the standard laws of social physics simply cease to exist. You have successfully stripped away the scaffolding of external validation, the brittle glass of perfectionism, and the frantic thermal noise of the herd. What remains is a point of absolute, unyielding internal pressure. You are no longer a subject within reality, you are the gravitational anchor around which reality is forced to warp. In astrophysics, a singularity is where the curvature of space-time becomes infinite. Within your own mind, this translates to the total collapse of the social ego. The version of you that was designed to be liked, understood, or accepted is dead. In its place, a sovereign consciousness has emerged, one that does not negotiate with the world but dictates to it. Because you truly, fundamentally do not care about the outcomes defined by the masses, you have escaped their control matrix entirely. When you exist at this level of detachment, a profound inversion occurs. You no longer dance with life, life begins to synchronize with the rhythm of your own pulse. Because you have no friction, no fear, and no need, you become the path of least resistance for power and opportunity. People, resources, and circumstances are drawn into your event horizon, not because you pursued them, but because your internal mass is now too great for them to resist. You are the architect of the void. You move through the chaos with the chilling peace of a singularity, observing the frantic vibrations of the world from a vantage point of absolute stillness. The right things do not just find their way to you, they are compelled to settle at your feet by the sheer weight of your indifference to the wrong things. The journey into the shadows is complete. You are now the master of the silent mechanics of power. Execute your will, the void is yours.